From being Africa's biggest investor to being the biggest threat in the world, China is running out of growth potential. Its era of double-digit GDP growth is over as it makes a shift from industrializing to industrialized. It might seem strange that the country the world uses for low-cost manufacturing is looking for a labor source elsewhere, but that is exactly what it is doing. Believe it or not, China has become the victim of its own success. In the last 15 years, China has invested more than $800 billion in the low and middle income economies such as South Africa, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, and many other countries with similar demographics. Of course, China isn't financing projects worldwide out of love. Each of them are motivated with the likes of politics and power. Overseas investments offers China an opportunity not just to bolster its own economy, but also leverage its strength to increase its influence worldwide. Recently, China even surpassed the US to become the largest player in the global trades with a value of $3.95 trillion. This brings us to a very serious question. Are the world dynamics finally changing? China is playing its cards in a very strategic manner, and going forward, Africa is going to be its trump card. Both the countries have been partnering on investments for approximately the last 11 years. The collaboration and cooperation makes Africa one of China's greatest allies in the current global market environment. China's investments in the continent of Africa have been increasing at a steady rate, and in 2018, it even announced that it would be providing a financial support of $60 billion to Africa. Many of you might ask, why Africa? Well, Africa is one of the least developed areas of the world, and lack of development actually makes rapid growth very easy. The first step towards economic development for a country would ideally be to exploit its natural resources. But for that, a country needs to have enough capital so that they can build the infrastructure required for it. It is estimated that 90% of the entire world's supply of platinum and cobalt and half of the world's supply of gold can be found in Africa. It also accounts for nearly 75% of the world's coltan, an important mineral used in electronic devices including smartphones. Today, China is Africa's largest trading partner. With a population of 1.2 billion which is expected to double by 2050, Africa is an emerging market that offers China a chance to achieve the growth and high returns from its investment. From the new ring road around Nairobi to the reconstructed Tazara railways between Zambia and Tanzania, China has built it all. The primary motivation behind China's push towards increased investments in African nations is the desire to secure a solid base of raw materials to fuel its rapidly growing economy that would further help them increase their political influence globally. The whole scenario is very advantageous for China, and if it rises to a position where it exerts major control over essential economic elements like the utility sector and the telecommunications, then they can develop strong political alliances along with military influence. Now here's something interesting. China has set up its first ever overseas military base in Djibouti, Africa, and is even paying a rent of $20 million a year for it. Whatever is happening between China and Africa, do you think it's a story of globalization or colonization? The USA and China may have appeared to have friendly relations in the past. However, these two economic superpowers have been in a constant power struggle to achieve world domination. While the US has clearly portrayed their intentions in the past, China continues to work towards its goal behind the mask of diplomacy. China is doing this with the help of an ambitious economic development commercial project that focuses on improving connectivity and cooperation among multiple countries spread across the continents of Asia, Africa, and Europe. It is known as the One Belt, One Road initiative. This is the brainchild of the Chinese President Xi Jinping. There is a new highway in Pakistan, a new railway terminal in Kazakhstan, and a new bridge in Laos. All of them have been financed by China. It is a multi-trillion-dollar project, and China has even announced investments over $1 trillion in various infrastructure projects in the Belt nations. It is funding them by offering them low-cost loans. Now here's where this gets interesting. The Silk Road was supposedly known as the fastest trade route in the ancient times, and President Xi Jinping is trying to replicate history by building an economic belt along the Silk Road. This is known as the Belt and Road Initiative or the BRI.
It's largely a series of power gas, oil, as well as maritime related projects looking to connect this region from East Asia all the way to Europe.
This is a region that's experienced tremendous dynamic growth over the past 2 decades, but that growth has been uneven.
There is this big gaping pockets of black here throughout Central Asia. There is this lack of connectivity here between these different types of regions, and that is what the Belt and Road Initiative is designed to tie.
The project is divided into 2 segments. One being the overland economic belt of 6 corridors which connects many countries across Asia and Europe and serves as a route to get goods in and out of China. For example, there is a gas pipeline constructed from the Caspian Sea to China and a railroad connecting London and China. And 2, the Maritime Silk Road, which is a chain of seaports connecting the South China Sea to the African nations that will also help in directing trade to and fro from China, can turn out to be very beneficial for them. However, concerns have been put forth regarding whether China will be able to receive India's cooperation in bringing the initiative to fruition. India represents a strong economic force and would prefer developing the Indian Ocean's infrastructure instead of allowing China to have any control over the region. While Chinese investments in India's underdeveloped maritime infrastructure could benefit the Indian economy greatly, it remains skeptical to accept such investments as the possibility exists that China is primarily attempting to expand its own territorial and economic interests. Also, given the current border tensions, it is unlikely that India will take part in this initiative. So far, over 68 countries have signed the agreements for these projects, and the numbers are shooting up because China shows it as a win-win for everyone. But there is a lot more to the BRI than just the economics. For example, take the BRI's most important project, Pakistan. The country has a debt of $105 billion, which is almost 40% of their economy. Like many countries in the Central and South Asia, Pakistan has a stagnant and a corrupted economy. It wasn't a popular place for foreign investments. But that changed in 2001 when China offered to build a brand new port in the town of Gwadar and a highway along with a railway network which would allow them to connect to the Middle Eastern countries. Even though these networks became a $62 billion corridor for the BRI, Pakistan now owes China over $19 billion for the projects. Given the state of Pakistan's political and economic situation, it is highly unlikely that they will be able to repay the amount, and therefore the port has been leased out to China for 40 years for their own military and trade agendas. Countries like Djibouti, Myanmar, Sri Lanka and Serbia have had the same fate as Pakistan. Basically, China is giving out loans worth billions of dollars with very few conditions and interest rates. When these countries are unable to repay, they are forced to give up a large stake in their economic infrastructure, including ports and trade routes. So it is no surprise that the BRI investments are inclined towards less democratic countries in the region. China has signed agreements with countries with military regimes, authoritarian governments, and some of the most corrupt nations in the world who are currently devastated by conflict. Over 12 countries owe China more than 20% of their GDP as debt. Eventually, these loans need to be repaid, but given the political instability in these nations, it seems highly unlikely. Even though China is not getting its money back, it is achieving many more important strategic goals and may profit in the long term. The UN has even warned that the BRI could be the next risk to the global financial system. However, the BRI is China's way of leveraging power to become the world leader. By building relationships and taking control of global trade, China is well on its way. What are your thoughts on the BRI? China's growth is challenging the status of the US, which has been the world's lone superpower for the last several decades. The situation has been aggravated due to the COVID crisis. A series of bitter retaliations between Trump and China have plunged relations between the two countries and has led to a Cold War. While the world is still coping with the pandemic, China has put no pause on its quest and has initiated disputes on many fronts. They have effectively abrogated the treaty with the United Kingdom, wherein China had promised to maintain a special status for Hong Kong under the one country, two systems principle. They have called for the incorporation of Taiwan back into mainland China after 71 long years, and they have heated up the border dispute with India. The worst mistake that a country could possibly make is to start a war that it cannot afford. This brings us to the question, can China afford a war with India? Military deployment is a big challenge for China right now because it is already engaged in too many fronts, starting from the intrusion of its fighter jets in the Taiwanese airspace to the ships in the South China Sea trying to fortify the claims of the waters around the islands. It is in a dispute with 6 other countries and has recently entered the Japanese waters and is rubbing them in the wrong way. China is in a war with itself. It is still fighting to legitimize its claims on Tibet, Xinjiang and Outer Mongolia. Along with that, it is even fighting the second wave of coronavirus in Beijing. With all this happening, can they really compromise on any of these fronts to engage in a full-fledged war with India? The GDP of China stood at $2.91 trillion in the first quarter of the year, and that is a drastic drop of 6.8% year on year. They are even in a trade war with the United States, which has cost them approximately $35 billion until now. Fighting India would mean losing Indian markets worth $74 billion. At this point of time, the whole world is against China for the tardy warning about the deadly virus, and industries are moving out of China due to lack of trust and heavy political influence. Apple's manufacturing partners, Wistron Corporation and Pegatron, are even considering shifting their units to India. China needs to focus on building relations worldwide rather than going on war to be able to gain trust and hence bring back investments into the economy. India, on the other hand, has the backing of the world's leading powers, and many of them support India even through their military. However, India is heavily dependent on China with a trade deficit of $53.6 billion. Before moving into an era of boycotting Chinese goods, India must focus on building up its own economic muscles before it can flex them. One of the fears among Indian leaders is that if there were to be a full-blown military clash between India and China, then it would be a repeat of what happened back in 1962. There are many things India can do that are short of a war. It is a part of the larger issue, that is, India needs to reevaluate its foreign policy, that the single most important change in the international system that has happened in the last 50 years is the rise of China, and it directly impacts India. In the 80s, the GDP of both countries were almost equal. China's GDP is now 5 times that of India's and is the second largest in the world with a valuation of $15.2 trillion. Even though there is a huge potential for a broad and deep alliance between the US and India, India cannot rely on Trump's word. There have also been reports claiming that Donald Trump was in contact with Xi Jinping to help him in his re-elections. We are entering a bipolar world where the US and China stand out as number 1 and 2. Even the Soviet Union was never as rich as China, and that cannot be changed be it the Trump or the Biden administration. India needs to make a crucial decision as to where it will fit in this bipolarity. The circumstances make it so confusing as to what China is really up to. On one hand, it has been fighting wars and claiming land and water areas, and on the other, it has been investing trillions of dollars into economies. According to reports, the Chinese economy is expected to recover strongly in the second half of the year if capacity utilization comes back to normal. As tourism is not bound to come back to normal this year, China largely depends on the demand from its neighboring countries to achieve its targets. Supply chain problems have left many economies with no choice but to depend on the Chinese manufacturing. Do you think China can achieve its long-term goal of economic and political domination while most of the countries are shifting their production away from it? Well, we don't know if China is going to harvest our homes as they did in Xinjiang, but one thing is certain, that they are covering their conquest behind the mask of diplomacy and do have a plan that would change the way we look at the world. The world faces the danger of being diplomatically isolated, and there is a chance that if the situation escalates, it might even result in the Third World War.